The pundits of San Diego was supposed to have, was essentially predicting that we were going to have a much smaller turnout in this past general election. Some statisticians and academics were predicting anywhere from a 34 to 38% turnout, a prediction that was, of course, proven wrong by a range of 7 to 11 percentage points. There are many factors that come into play which may strike the fancy of a registered voter to vote in an election. Of course, many of those speakers before me had cited those reasons. A candidate or measure may trigger a person going out to vote. On the other side, why are voters not voting? Time, priorities, too much on the ballot, nothing of substance, it's boring. Voter fatigue has been mentioned a number of times. That is too many preceding elections. The weather, barriers, cynicism in our government as well as elected officials and so on. We must give voters the benefit of the doubt. If there was one thing to know for sure is we have too many items on the ballot. In this past election, we had in San Diego County, we had nearly 500 candidates on the ballot across 141 contests. Now in San Diego County, we have over 300 political jurisdictions, and we had 569 different ballot types in this past November election. Couple this with the voters' wish to be educated on the candidates and measures, and you create a decision point for them. Do I take several hours to educate myself on the candidates and measures, or after a long day's work, or do I read to the kids before tucking them into bed? I speculate that it's such priorities as kids which are winning the day. No evidence to support just sheer speculation. What is my personal voting routine? Well, let me tell you that. It consists of my wife and I going out to dinner, bringing our mailed ballot, sample ballot and voter information pamphlet, all of the election material we have been mailed by candidates and committees, and a laptop, of course, to be able to get the net to figure out who are these judges, while leaving our 4 boys at home. It takes us hours to do our research at the restaurant, but in the end, we make our selections. Now, my wife cries foul because I poorly defend it and define it as a date. And this is where I hear boos generally when I say that. It's about giving time, and voters must care to make time. We must give voters reason for them.
I think everybody here would consider that a date, but only the people in this room.
We must give voters reason for them to make time. I spoke of my wife and I receiving our mail ballot. In this last election, nearly 56% of the 1.55 million registered San Diegans received a mail ballot. Nearly 52% of that number voted and returned it to our office. This is 7% higher than the 45% overall. I would contend that it was the mail ballot voters that propped the San Diego turnout percentage in this last election. San Diego voters have demonstrated time and time again that the propensity to vote is higher when they receive a mail ballot than for those whose only option is to go to the polling place. In this past statewide election, at most, 36% of voters turned out. Expressed a different way, a mail ballot voter was 16% more likely to vote than a person who didn't get a mail ballot. Now let me turn my time over to the targeted language communities that we have in San Diego County. So how does San Diego's limited English proficiency voters or our federally covered Section 203 languages, including Spanish, Filipino, Vietnamese, and Chinese fare? They were below the overall. The Latino vote, 16% lower, 10% lower for Vietnamese, 8% lower for Filipino, and Chinese, 6% lower. However, there's a brighter picture when it comes to these same languages groups in the area of voting by mail. Our analysis demonstrates that regardless of the type of election, whether a major statewide or special election, those who are in the protected classes and who are signed up as a permanent mail ballot voter had a 10% higher participation rate than the overall turnout in these communities. This 10% higher participation vote by mail rate has been demonstrated over time, where in the 2010 gubernatorial general election, the 2012 presidential general election, and now the 2014 gubernatorial general election, we saw this 10% positive difference in the community. San Diego County's outreach is similar as my colleagues in other counties. Every year we attend over hundreds of outreach events. We go to each USCIS citizenship ceremony. We attend a spectrum of community-based organization meetings. We host language group advisory meetings to discuss election topics. We work closely with advocacy groups, election protection, as well as election integrity groups. We work to reduce potential barriers, for example, keeping polling place the same from one election to another. All of our voting materials and website is translated in our federally covered languages. messages. We inform voters through a number of mediums, including TV, newspaper, radio, and of course, social networking. In November, we introduced drop-off locations at 14 locations, including county libraries, city libraries, a senior center, and city clerk. Prior to that, the only place that you could drop off your mail ballot was at our office at Kearney Mesa. The amount of mail ballot voters who exercised this option actually exceeded our expectation, my expectation. I was pleasantly surprised on the total number of people that dropped out their mail ballot. And I believe it's because they want that in-person feel as well as that I voted sticker. Finally, I am excited at the opportunity to one day conduct a special election under the recently passed Assembly Bill 1873, authored by Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, as well as mentioned and supported by now our new Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, which will allow San Diego County as a pilot to conduct a special congressional or legislative vacancy election under a new model. That new model would entail sending every registered voter a mail ballot with a postage-paid return envelope, require drop-off locations, having weekend voting in the vacant jurisdiction, and to implement an outreach and education plan. I am optimistic about what this bill will hold as it relates to turnout. This concludes my remarks, and I am happy to answer any questions or elaborate on any points that I've given today.
So this bill was basically made special elections, all mail elections.
It's what I consider primarily vote by mail, and the reason why is because we're mailing everyone a mail ballot, but we're still giving an option for voters to go to what is known as this vote center that you've heard a number of times today, to go to one of those locations to still cast a ballot if they choose not to vote the mail ballot they were given.
How long will those be open for? Those?
It's a 5-year pilot.
No, the vote centers.
So at this point in time, the vote center is for election day. And then we're also obligated to have on weekend voting on a Saturday as well as a Sunday in the vacant jurisdiction.
So you have to have those vote centers open on the weekends?
Well, we only have to have one location open on the weekend, okay, at minimum.
Can I ask, Dean, I'm sorry, I know we already let you off the hot seat, but if we were to make it so that that special elections like this, yeah, why not come join? You got your fellow registrars, so now you're at home. If we were to basically make all special elections vote by mail, with some caveats for voting centers and drop-off locations, et cetera, what would be the price difference in this North County election right now? That's about $1.4 million under the current rules in LA. If we were to switch to this other model that was primarily vote by mail, where you just send every registered voter a ballot just for that one particular special, what would be the price difference? Any sense?
Yeah, I think that, obviously it would be considerably less expensive. I would say that you probably would, I want to be cautious on this because I need to run the numbers, but I think potentially you could probably reduce at least 30 to 40% of the cost of that election by moving to an entirely vote by mail special election.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you.
If I may, because one of the thrusts behind AB 1873 when we asked Assemblywoman Gonzalez to author it was because we're in this exact same position where we had this domino effect occurring where we had a vacancy in the 40th State Senate election, which then created a vacancy in the 80th State Assembly District election. And in that 40th State Assembly District election, we had nearly over 244,000 registered voters. Of that 244,000 registered voters, we had a 15% turnout. So that's about 37,000 registered voters. Of that 37,000 registered voters that voted, 85% of all those votes that were cast were mail ballots. That only left approximately 3,600 people going to nearly 200 polling locations. In fact, we had situations where one voter went to a polling place and voted, meaning there's more poll workers there than there were voters all day.
Wow.
That election cost $1.5 million to conduct, and I agree with our analysis is that with this concept and this model, our conservative estimate was 30 to 40% savings.